We are live. Awesome. Well, welcome. My name is Greg McDonough. I'm the host of the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. Thank you for joining us for this YouTube live session with Courteney Lowe. She is a former professional cyclist, the winner of the New Zealand Road Race Championships in 2013, and is currently the Chief Operating Officer for Fuel Goods. Courteney, I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. And yeah, it feels, when you say 2013, gosh, it feels like a long time ago. But yeah, I'm psyched to be here and excited to talk about nutrition.
Well, if you want to talk about a long time ago, when I was reviewing your bio, I realized that I graduated high school when you were born, so it only gets better. And for those of you who don't know, Courteney's partner Laura was a guest on the podcast a handful of months ago, almost probably a year ago. And so, if you're interested in that show and learning about the story of Fuel Goods, I'll put a link down in the description. So just scroll down and check that out. But before we jump into fueling and nutrition, you guys are based out of Asheville. I'd love to know how you and the team and the community is recovering.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing, actually. I think obviously when the hurricane happened in, September, which is almost just over 7 months ago now, I think, it was a pretty eye-opening experience to how awesome the community here is, because I think it was during a pretty rough time politically, and there was just a lot going on, but everybody came together, everybody helped each other. And I think that's the reason why it's still coming along really fast. We personally were okay. Our warehouse got flooded. We were working with a 3PL at the time. They brought it back pretty well, but we have since moved all the warehousing in-house up high away from the river, which has been awesome and a cool experience for us. We've never done the warehouse in it within the company before. It's giving us a really cool customer service, and that we can put extra products in based on what the person ordered, and that's been awesome. But I mean, Asheville as a whole, I think it's coming back for sure. Winter was tough. We had a really hard winter, so not a lot of rebuilding could really happen. The cleanup is definitely still happening. I run along the river 4 to 5 times a day. Sorry, not a day. That's a lot of training. 4 to 5 times a week, and there's like boats in the river picking up. Like, I saw them bring out a car recently. Like, there's still a lot of cleanup. It's still pretty devastating, but everybody is definitely working hard together to rebuild it, and it will get there, and it will be better for sure.
Yeah, well, you're in my thoughts, and if there's anything we can do in our community, please feel free to ask. So just to give some background on the purpose of this YouTube live series, really we're trying to have conversation with the sort of the newer long distance athlete, and it could be long distance cycling, it could be Ironman training. I'm a triathlete, so I tend to only focus on that. And it's really sort of a high level conversation, some tips and tricks. This is the third of our series. So the first one we talked about goal setting. Last week we were talking about open water swimming. Those links will also be below. And next week we're talking about cycling, and we just added a fifth for running for 2 weeks from today. So come in, check us out noon on Thursdays. So just to also refine the nutrition that we're talking about today and fueling is in particular with training and racing. We're not going to get into sort of diets and fads and what I should have for breakfast tomorrow. So Courteney, I'm going to play out a scenario to get us started. So a mutual friend introduces us because I just got into triathlon, long distance triathlon. And she says, you got to talk to Courteney about nutrition. And you and I get together and I say, Courteney, how important is nutrition and fueling when it comes to long distance, long-term endurance racing?
It's probably one of the most important things. I think, like, obviously training your body is really important so that you can withstand the racing and the back-to-back training. But if you are not fueled, if you're not hydrated, you're first of all going to hate it. It's going to be awful. If you can imagine yourself at the end of the day, maybe 3 o'clock, and you're getting really hangry and you don't have any food or coffee on hand, like, imagine how you feel without actually exerting yourself. So I think it's so important for the enjoyment. It's important for the longevity and the recovery. It's like, if you do not fuel during, if you do not recover after, you will not recover for your next one. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to get better, and it's going to be very short-lived. So in my opinion, fueling is the most important thing.
You know, it's many people call it the fit, like you think about triathlon, right? Three disciplines. Many people call it the fourth discipline. And to your point, it's really the most important. Like if you are off your nutrition plan, your day's done. Like you might still finish, but your goals, you could hurt yourself. Um, so let's talk about like what types of nutrition. You and I had a conversation earlier in the week to sort of prepare for this. And one of the topics that we started talking about is like what we have, the nutrition we have on the race course and the nutrition we train with. Can you give us some tips and tricks and recommendations on that being consistent or inconsistent? Give us some insights on what's important there.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people race all the time. So it's like if you get an idea of what the race has in terms of fuel, if it changes a lot, then that makes it a little harder. If you have a race, the big race that you're working towards, if you find out what that fuel is, I think it is really important to give it a shot, but do not rely fully on it, because I think they're going to supply you with, maybe it's a really good sponsor. I'm not sure why they do it, but the fuel may not work for you, or it might. If it does, awesome, that's great. But try it in training for sure. But even if it does work with you, I would highly recommend training with all sorts of fuel. And I mean different types of chews, different types of gels. When we're talking Ironman, I think it's important to have complex carbs on the bike if your stomach can sustain it, because you need something to last you. You've still got a lot to go. But try a lot of different things, because the more you train your gut, the more you can prepare for race day. Even if you try the fuel on race day, it works really well. Like, don't fully rely on it. You might run past and drop it. Who knows what can happen on race day. And it's going to change, right? You're going to do that race, and then if you do another one, there'll be a different type of fuel. I think it's really important to just range your fuel. Even if you find something good, try all sorts, because the more you put in your gut while you're working out, the more it's going to prepare for whatever comes on the day.
So you mentioned complex carbs, and for the audience members that are really new at this, they might not understand exactly what you're speaking of. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a complex carb is?
Yeah, so a complex carb is more real food. So like you think of a gel and a chew, it's made up of these carbohydrate sources that are just not something that you would go and snack on during the day. They're used to go straight into your bloodstream and give you that push straight away. Whereas a complex carb is more something found in a bar, like any kind of energy bar, or maybe there are some types of gels that are a little more real food that are going to sustain you for a lot longer, but they also, your body has to work a little bit harder to digest them. And the thing with complex carbs is if you're running, it's a lot harder. Running affects your gut a lot more than the bike. There's a lot more impact. So especially in a half or full Ironman, I think the earlier on in the bike that you can have the complex carbs, the bars, the more real food, maybe you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, like something that is more real food that is going to sustain you for longer, the better, so that it slowly works its way through the system. And then by the time you get onto the bike, then you can have the more gels and chews and the things that kind of hit that bloodstream a little faster.
Yeah, for me, my strategy's been on the bike, I'll do a bar and then a goo and then a bar and then a goo and just follow that pattern. Also with my goos, I find that I want to put half the goo in my mouth, fill my mouth with water, dilute the goo, and then swallow, so that it's not just all that stuff
Yeah.
like piling up in your stomach.
That's a great way to do it. I think the other thing that's really important is if you're having, say, a gel or something, or a huge bite of a bar, or you're downing a bunch of chews, if you're doing it without preparing your body, you're going to get gut distress. So it's like, if this sounds really strange, and like, especially for people who are a little bit obsessive about their teeth, like myself, I kind of cringe with it, but you don't want to just down a gel, because your blood flow right now is in your, like, going towards your muscles. It's trying to repair your muscles as they work so they can keep going. And if you throw a gel down there, it doesn't have time to work its way all the way back to your gut and start digesting. So it's kind of like when you're prepping food for dinner. You're putting it in your mouth, you're washing it around your mouth. That's why a chew is generally better, because you've got that chewing sense that's bringing the blood flow to your gut to start digesting. Same with the gel, put it in there, wash it around, prepare it, and then swallow it. So like it's just a really good way. It helps your gut, and then do a little bit at a time. So like you said, you have a little bit, you have it with water. That's a great way to get it down. But don't have the whole thing at once and then throw it to the side. Have a little bit at a time. If you see a lot of these women and men doing marathons, they're holding the gel for a while. They're having a little bit, and they're continuously running, and then they're having a little bit more. You just don't want to overflow the gut, because it will end up probably not so good for you.
Yeah. Well, we've been there for sure. And it's taken me years and years and years of trying new things, training the gut to find out, to dial it. And I think that's part of your point, right? This takes time, right? And if you're training for your first long distance race, the more that you can practice leading up during your training, just to dial in like what your frequency is, the better you're going to be.
Yeah, for sure. It's super important.
And I love the fact that you mentioned peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's something I put in my special needs bag. And it's usually at like mile 50, I'm starting to think about it. Like, oh, that's going to be like the crunchy peanut butter and the jelly. And it just gives you something to look for.
The first marathon I did, I showed up with my drink bottle with all the fancy stuff in it, and my gels and my chews. And I was like, okay, this is going to be on point. I've got it sorted. And meanwhile, my friend I was doing it with, who's very casual, shows up with a bunch of Uncrustables. And I was like, oh, that doesn't seem like a very good idea. And she, obviously I want to push fuel goods, and I think there's a lot of really good fuel, but like at the time, she was going for it. She was like, I can't do any of that. She had her Uncrustables, and she loved it. Her stomach was fine. And I still to this day couldn't imagine running and eating an Uncrustable, but if it works for you, then heck yeah, it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's kind of making my stomach turn, but a lot of the nutrition does as well, right? It's just a matter of let's talk about bottle nutrition, because one of the things I struggled with early in my career, and again, for the audience, I'm a back of the packer. I finish with the light stick on. I get the full value of my race fees. But during my first handful of years, like the bottles just got really sweet. And then when you're adding goo, in fact, on my bike now, I've got 2 bottles with nutrition in them, and then 1 just water. So when I'm taking in goos, I can sort of dilute the goo. Any thoughts or strategies around like how much sweetness you need versus sort of, all the other nutrition?
Yeah, I think that again is really based on the person, right? Like I think if people can handle chews, great. That's a great form of fueling. A lot of people can't, and they want to do gels. And then some people can't do gels, and they have to do carbohydrate in their bottle, which is also a great way to do it. I think the thing is, it's really important to differentiate your carbohydrate to your electrolyte. So you don't want to rely on the sodium content in your carbohydrate mix to be your electrolyte fuel, because when you're drinking that, it is going to be overflowing everything in your body. It can't grab onto all the electrolytes at that one time, because it's also like, okay, now we're sending carbs that way too, and it goes back to the gut distress, and it's just a lot. So I think if you are doing it through your bottle, I would suggest having 1 carbohydrate drink, and then you want 1 electrolyte drink. And within the electrolytes, it can be pure electrolytes. So it doesn't need to be sweet. Usually it's better to not be sweet. There's a lot of different products out there. I know Scratch make an everyday hydration, and that is pretty much pure sodium, magnesium, potassium, just enough electrolytes to help. But it is really important to make them different, because you don't want to have a goo gel and then drink your carbohydrate, because it's going to be so much. And usually the way that I like to do it is if you're on the run and you have feed stations, so they're handing out water, and they're usually handing out water and whatever the race provides. If you know that there's one coming up, to have your goo right before, so then you can have the water and drink that afterwards. So it's just like preparing so that you can help have it down. Or maybe if you're nervous you're going to miss the water, hold on to the goo, grab the water, then start sipping on it, have a little bit. But yeah, I think it, and if you don't need carbohydrate in your bottle, then that's a good opportunity to have electrolytes in your bottle. In one of them, have water in your other bottle, and then you can have your gels, your goos, your chews, whatever, and have the water afterwards, and then make sure you're still having electrolytes, because I think a lot of people are so obsessed about the carbohydrate per hour in your body, and it is extremely important. However, they're kind of ignoring the most important part, which is being hydrated. And because so many people bonk, and they think they're bonking because they've not had enough carbohydrate, but a lot of the times it's because they're dehydrated. And when you're dehydrated and you're trying to have carbohydrate, your body is not going to take it like it should. So it's really, really important not to rely on those mixed carb versus sodium as your sole hydrating.
Do you have any, so, right, long distance race, I'm on my bike, I don't know, sadly 7 hours at times. I've got my special needs bag, but at 56, but in between, right, if I'm carrying 3 bottles, that's maybe 2.5 hours worth of sort of hydration and nutrition in the bottle. Any strategies of how to carry more carbohydrates so that when you take on that next bottle of water, you can turn it into the drink mix that you want?
Yeah, so I think so on the bike you've got your 2 bottles, and do you have an additional place for your hydration, or do you grab that from the side? So you're saying you have 3 bottles.
So I've got 2 in the back, one underneath, and then
Okay.
for some races I've had 1 in the cockpit. So at times I've had 4 just to have. Well, I'll give my strategy in a minute, but I was
Yeah.
what do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think there it's just, if you can have some gels with a high amount of carbohydrate in it, or some chews, mixing it up is really important. Just, you don't want that flavor fatigue. It's good to keep that going. So as long, like, eating your carbs is preferred. So if you can eat as many of the carbs as you possibly can, and then you can have your water in 2 of the bottles. You can have your electrolyte in 2 of the bottles. And then if you need the carbohydrate in the bottle, then make sure you have your carbohydrate, your electrolyte, and then your plain water. But I just think, like, if you can just slowly have a little bit of gel, a chew every 10 minutes, whether you need to set a reminder and force yourself to do it, it's really important. And I think the way you do it is, if we're going back to the start of the bike, and it's you want that more, like we were talking about before, that complex carb, that one that's going to last longer. At the start, you're probably quite anxious and stressed and nervous, and that is, your blood flow is going to kind of calm yourself down. You can use a combination of just that's where it's really important to get the blood flow coming to your gut, because you've got the stress of the actual activity you're doing, you've got the anxiety stress, and so your blood flow is going everywhere. So if before you start having those complex carbs, have a little bit of a gel that you wash around in your mouth, or the carbohydrate out of your bottle, or a chew, just to prepare it. Have it, and then get into it, and then you can keep changing it. So have the chew, have the complex carb, 10 minutes later do kind of the same. You just go back and forth. And it sounds it sounds like a lot, but I think if you think of it as simply as possible, as thinking, I need to prepare the body, and then I need to execute, and I need to keep doing it throughout, maybe that will help.
Absolutely. And audience members, if you got a question or a comment, the chat's open. feel free to throw something my way and I'll pass it on to Courtney. Um, I guess it's probably a similar strategy to when you have those moments that you just like, you look at the bar, you look at your goo, and your stomach is just giving you the middle finger saying no, right? You're no
Mhm.
more, no more. Um,
Yeah.
give it a similar strategy for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially if it's doing it near the start, you can't afford, you have to almost say, I'm sorry, but I'm doing this, because it's like if you get to that point of being hungry, it's over. If you get to that point of being thirsty, it's too late. And I think in that way, it's just take small bits and leave it in your mouth. Like you don't necessarily need to fully focus on getting it and swallowing it. Like sometimes you could just put a chewer gel in there and just let it sort of sit for a little bit, or just sip on it slowly. I think it's kind of daunting to think, oh, I've got to have this huge amount of gel and it's going to really hurt and it's not going to feel good. I think if you learn to just do it really, really slowly, and your body feels okay doing it, it reminds that, okay, this is okay. This is going to help. But just small amounts at a time. Do not rush it down. Do not overthink it. But just know that you have to do it if you want to get to the end with somewhat of a being able to walk afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings back a memory for me. So years ago, I did Zurich, Ironman Zurich, and it was my first European race. And the special needs area was completely different than what I was used to in the States, right? There's no volunteers. Not many of the Europeans actually pack a special needs bag. And
Mm-hmm.
so I know it's around mile like 58, and I'm on this climb, and I come over the hill and I see my parents, and then I go down the hill, and then I realize that the nutrition was behind me. So I had this dilemma. I'm like, do I go back and reclimb that hill, or I just eat off course? And luckily I tasted what was on course, and so I felt comfortable with that. But the ultimate point being, the afternoon then got hotter, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a ton of carnage of athletes like on the side of the road, and I was feeling lightheaded, and I was not going to have a good day. And I realized that years before, when I did Lake Placid, I had 3 flat tires that year, and I still finished with a pretty good bike time. And I convinced myself, you know what, just stop at the
Mm-hmm.
next aid station on the bike, just get out of your pedals, get off your bike, and have a little bit to eat. And I
Mm-hmm.
spent, I don't know, 10 minutes, but it saved my race.
And that makes total sense, because like we said at the start, like fueling will make or break your experience. And if you keep pushing without it, then you're gonna hit the wall. And when you hit the wall, there's no coming back. So if you really get to that point and you're just like, I just need to stop, I need to breathe. I think breathing really just like calms your body down and just slows that blood flow, and just like have something to drink, have something to eat, and you don't have to stress about how it's going to digest better, because you're at a little bit more of a calmer state. And then when you get back on, then you're just it's gonna stop you bonking. It's just gonna help so much. And I think don't stress if you need to stop. It will get you to the finish line. It will really could make or break the race.
Absolutely. So I'm going to change subjects, well, not subjects, but change the conversation. Um, and you're thinking about a race day, let's say it's a Sunday. When would you recommend we start preparing like the nutrition journey? Is it
Mhm.
the night before? Is it 3 days before? Like, give us a sense of what sort of race day, the nutrition and fueling over race day weekend should look like.
Yeah, so I think usually 3 to 5 days is a good time to start, ideally five. And that's where you want to slightly increase, not dramatically, but slightly increase the carbohydrates. Make sure you have a bottle on hand with a little bit of electrolyte. Don't just be drinking plain water all the time. But I think you the closer you get to the race, the more anxious you're going to be, or the more stressed you're going to be. So it's going to be harder to digest the food that you're eating when you get closer. So you generally can be pretty normal 3 to 5 days out with a little bit more in the size of your food. And then that 3 days to go is when you want to increase the carbohydrate content, but not by your portions. So don't go and sit down the night before with a huge bowl of pasta. Like that's the old wives' tale that just doesn't really work. Like you're stressed, you're gonna go to bed, and you're gonna have your body's working overtime to calm down, and now it's working overtime to like digest all of this carbohydrate you just put in there. So that's why it's really important to do it earlier, to have more meals throughout the day. So increase it by having smaller portions, same size portions but more. And then it's also better, especially those last 2 nights, to have it a little bit earlier, because like I said, your body's a little anxious, it's a little bit stressed, it's going to have maybe not the greatest sleep anyway. So don't add on top with having to digest the food. So maybe have it more like 5:30, a small amount. You should be topped off from your 3 to 5 days leading up. So you shouldn't be hungry. Definitely do not be hungry. It's not a good start. And then maybe if you're about to go to bed and you're like, oh, okay, I'm peckish, maybe you could just have a small snack before bed. But yeah, don't overload the system at once. It's the same that goes for when you're doing the race. You just a little bits at a time are better. And that same goes for the hydration. Don't just have like a really high sodium drink that you're just flushing down. Have a little bit in the bottle that you're sipping throughout the day. Don't like triple it or quadruple what you're used to, because again, your body's not used to it. People deal with sodium in different ways. And just, it's all about just being gradual with it.
I find that the dinner the night before, to your point, the earlier I can have it, the better the start of my next day. And it's not just because like my body has done what it needs to do by the time I get to transition. And I got to tell you, like those porta potty lines are stressful.
Yes.
Especially when you're getting close to the cannon. It's like,
yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
what am I going to do here? And I really appreciate a little bit at a time. I mean, that's been a real sort of consistent message across our conversation. You know, the smaller amounts, every 10 minutes instead of every 30 minutes while you're on your race. As I promised, I was keeping this pretty brief because I feel like if I was a newer athlete in this and I just listened to 30 minutes of this conversation, I would feel really overwhelmed right now. And so this is when I think the end should come. But I wanted to give you a chance, Courtney, to any other thoughts that you had or wanted to share before I end our live stream.
I don't think so. I think the main thing to remember is I think a lot of people talk about really specific, like you've got some top athletes that are like, oh, I can do 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour, and then you go and try it and it doesn't work. I think it's just, you got to listen to your body, and practice is so important. You're training your legs and your arms for an Ironman. You got to train your gut just as much as you do for that. So if there's 3 takeaways, I would say focus on chewing or like swishing around something in your mouth. Just make sure that preparation within your body, it helps a lot. Small amounts often is another really important one, and just practice. I think and just don't stress. Like if you're going to get there and you don't have what you need, if you focus on the preparation and the small amounts at a time, you will probably be okay. And like you said, if you need to stop to have some fuel and just to make that allow you to get to the finish line, do it. It's really important. Fuel is so important.
And without a doubt, something will go wrong. But as long as you've put in the practice, kind of scenario played, if this happens, if I miss my special needs bag, what is my plan B?
Yeah.
Think through that stuff before you get to race day.
Yes. Yeah. Make an A, B, C, D, and sometimes E plan. If A doesn't go well, you have some backup plans.
It's another great piece of advice. So Courtney, thanks for joining us. It's been great being here on YouTube Live. We look forward to next week. We're talking about cycling, and we'll be with Hunter Allen, my coach, and he's probably going to nitpick over my bike performance so far this year. So come point the finger when you have the chance.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions following this, definitely let me know.
Awesome.
Cool.